Forcier here in Somalia, just to, I guess to give a quick background on us, I was recently told we are the 7th biggest employer here in Somaliland. We have about 60 staff conducting market research. A lot of the evaluations for USAID, who I saw were here today, on many of the sectors. And one of the big things that we're involved with at the moment, or continually are involved with, are TVET studies. And those are evaluating, technical vocation education programming. Where are the areas that can uptake and provide employment in Somalia, in Somaliland? I think one of the unique aspects of this specific research report, as opposed to a general what jobs are available in the market, this was a study that looked at what is an industry that we are seeing grow, and therefore, what are the specific needs of that industry, as opposed to going to respondents and saying, where are the jobs, going to the actual employers and saying, what do you need? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Saskia, who's going to start talking a little bit about the impetus of the report, and then we'll take it from there.
So as Lee already mentioned, this report really was a response to local demand. Specifically, it was a response from our steering committee members. We had 16 steering committee members who said we really need to look at this issue of skilled workforce. So what we did is we built the content of the survey and kind of the purpose of the survey with their support. We sent out the survey using SurveyMonkey to 16 different renewable energy companies. 18 received the survey and 15 completed the survey. The main finding, not a surprise to anyone in this room, but is that there are significant gaps that exist in the renewable energy labor force market, making it hard for companies to meet growing demand, but it also makes it very hard for companies to grow. The main gaps that were identified by the survey respondents were, first of all, the lack of skilled employees with sufficient training. And second of all, it was strong need for high quality training programs to develop current and future employees. 86% of the respondents said that they are looking to hire staff in the next 12 months. So they are looking to grow. The skills in highest demand were design, management, construction and installation, engineering, and technical expertise in renewable energy technologies. So, you want to do some more?
Yeah, I mean, as we get into some of the specific findings, I guess the big one is yesterday, I sat through the sessions, and over and over again, it came finance, finance, finance. Obviously, it's well known that that's an issue, that's something of importance when we talk about developing the sector. I think what might be even more interesting is when you actually talk to the sector, yes, finance is an issue, but what is actually brought up more is this idea of skilled workforce, developing the individuals who are going to be there on the ground, every day, fixing, maintaining, installing, all of this. So when we asked, what are the market gaps right now in the labor force, first and foremost, it comes up, engineering, technology. These are the gaps within our companies right now that simply the respondent organizations cannot fill. We talk about solar planning, we talk about production and processing, mechanics, basic technical skills, solar technology and installation, wind turbine mechanical maintenance, also wind turbine electrical installation. Again, very much specific skill sets. We're not talking about low-skilled labor here. We're not talking about semi-skilled labor. We're talking about specialized skill sets to serve this market. Go ahead and flip, Maya. When we talk about what are we going to hire in the future, when we ask the organizations, the electricity providers here in Somaliland and across Somalia, when they project out what are they going to be hiring in the next 12 months, in the next 24 months, again, engineering and technology. As generalists, when we get into more specific practical areas, solar planning skills, solar technology infrastructure skills, which I know a lot of the organizations here in the room, especially the foreign organizations, have expertise in. Again, mechanics, basic technical skills, wind turbine mechanical maintenance, wind turbine electrical installation. Again, it's the nuts and bolts on the ground, installing, maintaining these energy systems that we're talking about needing to install here across the country. Again, finance important, paying for them, how are we going to get them here? But once they are here, how are we actually going to ensure that these grids, that the technical equipment stays operational? Coming in. So very interesting here. When we asked the employers to kind of detail for us what their current labor force looks like, I was a little bit disturbed. We look, 20% and 19% are essentially back office support functions. When we talk about the people on the ground maintaining, installing, the real technical individuals, we're talking about 7% of their current labor force. Again, this is not for a lack of want. It's a lack of ability to recruit the kind of people that are needed to carry out these kind of initiatives. And if you flip, so what do all rapidly growing companies, industries do when they can't find the people? Well, what they do is they hire temps, and they make the people they have work a lot more. And that's exactly what you see here across Somaliland, Somalia, is the energy providers, when they cannot hire the kind of labor force they need, they are essentially temping out, they are essentially pushing their existing staff to work longer hours or bringing on foreign temporary labor.
I into that as well, because this is a survey sample of a good number of the providers, but not all of the providers. And I think this number actually would be higher if we were to get down deep. So they're having to go out and hire temps, externals. These are quality jobs that could be coming from the workforce here. So, I think this is a very, and they know this is a very telling set of data.
Yes, even Forcier here in Somalia right now works on some of the promoting inclusive markets in Somalia contract with DFID, who is sitting here. Some of the contracts, the initiatives right now that are geared towards promoting employment, a lot of times are looking at the low-skilled, semi-skilled workforce. I think right now in the electrical generation industry, this is not a low-skilled labor opportunity. This is literally a high-skilled labor opportunity that is ready-made for Somali individuals to move into, provided that we can provide the training necessary. So,
the other thing to note too, Erin, I'm sorry to start, is that organizations were also, they are training their own. They do have programs where they are retrofitting, they are trying to retrain. So.
Exactly, and I think that's a good point, right? The market is currently trying to fill its own gaps. Obviously, some of the next slides we're going to get into, go ahead and flip, show that there's some more expertise needed in that area. But again, we look out the next 2 years when we talk about the priority jobs over the next 2 years. Through the roof, technical experts. 86% of our respondents, almost every company currently in the electrical generation sector here in Somaliland, Somalia, is looking to bring on technical experts now. So while there's this long-term build of technical experts here in the country, there's also this immediate need to bring in and have technical expertise. So when we talk about the biggest priority areas, technical experts, equipment maintenance experts, project management, construction and installation. I think, again, there's a lot of firms sitting out in the audience right now who specialize in this, and it's not just external firms who bring this on. It's actually helping to coordinate so that we can raise a Somali workforce that is capable of maintaining this sector. Yes?
One thing too, we've said this is biased from the private sector, so this wasn't checked back against the experts here who also do training. They may have different interpretation of this and may have a lot to offer, and I think the private sector would be interested in their perspective, saying, you've done this in other contexts, what would how would you advise us to move forward? So this data should be looked at by the experts who also have done this in other contexts and say, we would concur here, or we would say slightly different there. But what's nice to see is a lot of the universities here are qualifying youth with skills that don't find employment here. So we've got too many administration and business, and the type of, where we need is this shift to the other side. So that's good news for those that are supporting education.
Very much agreed. Go ahead and flip. So, a big thing that's in the news here in Somaliland and throughout is, this foreign labor issue. It's a very contentious political issue at the moment, but when you ask the firms operating here in Somalia, why are you bringing on foreign labor? I think the answers are relatively straightforward, right? It's foreign labor right now has more relevant skill sets, technical training, and work experience to fill the immediate needs of the sector here in country. They're coming from, in many cases, diaspora, but the United States, France, Kenya, India, elsewhere in Asia, you're seeing in the sector at the moment. And again, most of them are temporary because of the security challenges, the contextual challenges, the fact that a lot of the temporary labor that's being brought into the country at the moment is not long-term. It's temporary by design, and I think that's where there's a big opportunity to start slowly filling this void amongst the Somali population here and the skilled workforce population here.
Yeah, and I having met now with a number of the emerging Somali local consulting companies, consultant groups, there are a lot of really qualified locals who are professionally very adept in their respective area. They aren't always recognized or sought after, and they're definitely not well organized. We know that. They're not networking the way they could or the way they need to. And the diaspora connect, which also sometimes meets resistance. I mean, I think there's a little bit of this. So you're diaspora, you come in, you scoop up the good job, you do it, then you leave, sort of a thing. Well, we need to sort through how to avail ourselves of that expertise, because it's great expertise to come in from other, training from other countries that have been trained quite well. But how do you engage that in a local context? One of the considerations we're having is about going toward a human capital forum where we would explore more in depth the don't show me the money yet kind of aspects of things. But we look at how do you look at and address plugging in this expertise and also having it feed a local workforce, not have it take away from that.
So yeah, again, to kind of follow up on Lee here, obviously, I think we all know that the agencies and the providers here across Somaliland, Somalia, would prefer to have a national skilled labor force. Of course, that is the reason that does not happen at the moment is there are a number of challenges. Not enough workers with relevant skill sets, not enough workers with relevant past project experience, not enough programs to train workers in renewable energy products. Again, we look here and especially when I think about yesterday, finance is an issue. Government regulation is an issue at some level. But when I look at the feedback we are getting from providers, first and foremost, it is a skilled workforce issue. It is not having the individuals here available in country that have both the requisite training, the requisite skill sets, and the requisite past experience to kind of fill the demands and the roles that are needed right now in the labor market. Go ahead, do you?
Only on this market gaps and biggest challenges, far to the right there, only one respondent said somewhat important, everyone said least important. I mean, lack of market demand is such a no-brainer. It's like, oh, the market demand is so overwhelming, we just gotta have it.
Yeah. So how could the Somali workforce development programs in the Somali renewable energy sector be improved? I mean, across the board, 100%. Improve linkages between the Somali training programs and international training programs. There are TVET centers here that are being supported. There are institutions that are supporting training. It is matching that training both in quality and needs to the requirements of the current businesses in operation. And again, third-party accreditation. Again, bringing up the quality of our TVET centers, of our training centers to match the requirements of those employing individuals. Also, right below that, implementing more rigorous standards in the training programs. I think a lot of that ties back into third-party accreditation. Point being, there is a big push here for quality. It's not number of training programs, it's not the number of TVET centers, it's improving those centers in quality to match what is needed in the market.
And that's one of the things I think for the donor community to realize in terms of coordination, because each one puts out their own initiative to train. And I think there needs to be a coming together and pushing toward, and we'll get to this in the very end, certification tying to international standards instead of having so many programs, which, I mean, scale is good once you know you're going toward a standard, but we got to get a standard first.
And I mean, just to get into it, I mean, some of the recommendations that are coming out of this, they really fall into, what other training programs do you think renewable energy sector in Somalia needs? Again, it's specifics. It's not generalist TVET programming. It's specific, to certain technologies, certain needs, construction, installation, engineering, electrical installation, electrical maintenance. Again, very specific roles within the renewable energy sector, not these generalist applications that really put out potential employees that aren't suited to the requirements of the jobs.
When I talk to some of the providers about how they've set the foundation to employ the technology, they're hiring consultants from all over the world. China, India, America, the UK, Scandinavia. They're getting it from all over the world. Now imagine trying to be a provider here and assimilate all that. I mean, gosh, guys, if I go to the UK, I can't figure out why they drive on the wrong side of the road. I'm sorry. I know to you it's the right side of the road, but to me, I think, how do you take all this advice from all over? Now, it's expert advice, but is it coordinated? How do you actually feel it? And then you wonder later on why something isn't turning or working as best it could. So, I mean, we need to start going to some kind of international standard that levelizes that.
Mm-hmm. Levelizes again and teaches the specific needs of the employers. Yeah. Again, not just these generalist outputs that a lot of times you see in TVET programming. And going into kind of the recommendations, they really fall into 3 levels. The first, building technical skill sets. By that, what are we talking about? We're talking about training programs that strengthen existing programs to focus on technical capacity in the renewable energy sector. Again, just what I was going on about is building specific skill sets that are the ones needed by the producers. We're talking about bringing international experts on so that there is this knowledge share, there's this expertise share, and we do this in a systematic, formulaic way, as opposed to bringing on short-term consultants that just come in to fulfill a role. Here we're talking about building capacity and training. Go ahead.
And the sense is, at least the initial response from universities, and we're going to have a workshop later on, we're going to plug some of the working groups that will go into this, but the universities are interested in having more quality curricula, coordinated curricula. They want to hear, and the providers can put together internal training systems. They'll pay for this. They're already funding this. I mean, they're not necessarily calling out and saying, well, give us money to train our people. They're saying, give us coordinated effort and some kind of a standard to train too.
And I mean, lastly on that, I mean, obviously, I think the biggest opportunity is bringing in some of the diaspora who might hold these skill sets already. So to kind of go into the next section of recommendations, again, one we're already talking about, which is enhancing the existing educational programs that are in place. With that, we're talking about building networks between the training programs here in Somaliland, Somalia, with the international institutions that are training in these same areas, and universities outside of the region that are training in these areas. We're talking about supporting the implementation of formal on-the-job training for companies to provide quality on-the-job training for the employees that they already have in place. We're talking about implementing structured internships with the TVET centers. I know from the development side, some of this already goes on in that you have TVET center graduates who are being placed in the job market, but only promoting that further would be advantageous. You're good?
Yeah.
And finally, kind of the last general set of recommendation would be just matching the market needs, right? So matching the needs of the market with the needs of the workforce, which include linking company demands to the workforce supply, right? So collaborating with the renewable energy providers to fill the gaps in the labor market and fill the skill gaps that are there. Establish new and supporting existing sustainable energy business associations to represent the private sector companies in coordination with stakeholders, right? You know, one of the big challenges right now for the development community is liaising with the needs of the providers. So if you have an association that can actually advocate for the needs of the providers with the development community, it'll make the process much easier. Create partnerships and exchanges with established companies in other countries. Again, you see this outside of the region, you know, across the world, where you have, you know, the trading of employees to fill skill gaps. Right.
No, it's good. Do you want to, okay, so we're going quickly because we're running short on time, but we don't want to shortchange this conversation. So there are going to be follow-up sessions going on next that I actually wanted to call up. Is Johnny here? Johnny Weiss? Do you want to come up here for a second? Now, this is not just a commercial for Johnny Weiss and his services. I want him to tell you a little bit about what he's done, the organization he has, because this, and if you could go to the next, there you go. He's going to go in depth into what they do. This is the kind of thing that could exist here. Go ahead.
Thanks, Lee. My background, I'm from the NGO sector, and I'm all about solar energy education and training. In the next session, I'm going to be talking about the relationship, the comprehensive relationship that I think needs to be developed between training, accreditation, and certification. This afternoon, I'm going to be talking about a model program in the United States that I helped start 25 years ago and was the executive director for a long time, Solar Energy International. I hope that some of the lessons and best practices that we've been doing there for the last 25 years could serve as a model for developing what is needed in Somaliland. Tomorrow, I've also got a workshop on microgrids, so I look forward to your questions and to getting a discussion going. Thank you.
Johnny, explain that very quickly, just like in like 2 seconds here.
Okay. Great.
Not to shortchange the conversation. You got 2 seconds.
Accreditation, training, and certification go together. In the United States, we have a self-initiated process where the industry is driving it. It's not driven by government, it's industry stepping up. And
could that work here? Just kidding. Yeah,
yes,
I was thinking that would be
private
received
sector.
well here.
Certainly private sector. What this leads to is oversight from accreditation, third-party certification, and quality training that exists for building the skilled workshop services that are needed everywhere. The whole thing is about ending up with quality, durable, and sustainable systems in terms of installation practices. It's all about the nuts and bolts of making these systems work long term.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, thank you. All right, so now, I hope we don't make a mistake here, but we're not going to take questions because the data is the data, it's in the report, and we want to go into the next sessions. Through the working sessions, if you have more questions, you can ask then. But if you do have questions about the study itself, about anything, you can get a hold of Erin, you can get a hold of Saskia or myself, and actually Maya was one who was behind a lot of putting this together. We should have actually given more of a nod to Maya from the beginning because she's the one that did a lot of this. But anyway, you can feel free to get to us. So. Anyway, let's go ahead and move to the next round of sessions.